Hello, everyone. I'm Sydney Despe, and it is such a pleasure for me to be here today. Now, if I were an adult, this is probably about the time I'd start listing my qualifications, such as degrees, past jobs, projects, books, etc. But for now, hello, I'm Sydney Despe, and I'm a teenager. So specifically, I'm a junior here on IMSA. And on campus, I'm part of a female empowerment group and sisterhood called BEAs. And this Wednesday, we hosted our annual Tales from the Homefront event, in which we take anonymously submitted student stories and present them on stage to an audience. Now, the purpose of this event is to spread awareness about the situations of IMSA students here and things that we've gone through. These stories can cover things such as trauma, abuse, neglect, assault, etc. And it's for a lot of students who come here and aren't aware that many of their classmates go through these situations and have been through them. And similarly, I find that adults also aren't aware that we have these stories to share. So as you might notice, there's a bit of a generational gap between myself and most of you. Most of you might be boomers or members of the Generation X, and I myself am a proud Generation Zer. And what I'm here today is to hopefully share my story, because I think that this generational gap can be a little bit awkward at times. With so much changing in our society within the past few years, we often forget how exactly to treat each other. And I hope that my story will provide a little bit of a teenage perspective upon how my generation would like to be treated. And hopefully in our breakout session after my talk and Devraj's, we will be able to talk about how you would like to be treated. So, it was almost exactly 1 year ago, actually about 11 months, I believe, that I gave a speech on this very stage. Well, pre-remodeling. But other than that, I can't help but feel like nothing has changed. I'm wearing the same shoes, I have some of the same people out in the crowd and backstage supporting me, for which I am very thankful for, by the way. And it feels like even my personality and problems have gone unaltered. Now, you almost never hear teenagers saying that they haven't changed at all within the past year. It seems we are ever-changing. Our identities, the way we express ourselves, it's dynamic. A very big part of us and a very beautiful part of life. And that's what I'm here to talk about today. Because no matter where you are at in life, you should be able to feel comfortable with who you are and how you express it. It should be a form of empowerment. Now, I love who I am now, and I'm comfortable with how I'm changing and growing. But I didn't always feel this way. Only boys get to do fun things, I used to whine, watching enviously as my younger brother and male cousins tore into Christmas gifts of science kits and Nerf guns, and I got things like stuffed animals and clothes so girly they would never, ever make it onto my body. Anything that I deemed fun that I did get was always the girly version, shrouded in pink and flowers, and oh, how I hated pink. And as I grew up into my teen years, this disconnect between the way my family viewed me and who I actually was only grew bigger and bigger. See, I was the oldest girl on my father's side for quite a few degrees, and no one ever knew quite what to do with me. See, I wasn't anything like the few younger female cousins that I did have. I was artsy, eccentric, controversial, and by age 10, I had already outgrown the kids' table and much preferred to sit and talk about politics with the adults. I liked things like combat boots, army green jackets, vinyls, and the Beatles. I had a few close school friends, but I wasn't anything like my younger cousin Tessa, who had a large group of girlfriends who would go out and do fun and girly things together. See, my family knew how to deal with and understand her. Myself, not so much. And this made me feel like who I was at the time was wrong. Why else would my family have so many problems understanding me? But I also didn't want to be perceived as weak, condemned to the kitchen, whisked away from the more interesting things at the party. Because I grew up in a house full of boys. It was just my father, younger brother, and I ambling through life together. And I love this aspect of my childhood. And there's many memories and marks that it made on my personality that I still cherish today. However, there were also several downsides. One example being that there was no room, or no space rather, for me to be a girl. I would never dare talk about my body or boys in my class, or anything past small talk that would make my father or younger brother uncomfortable. Anything that I did talk about like this earned me remarks such as, You can't say that to us. Isn't that girl talk? They would ask me. So, resultingly, as I entered middle school, my more distant relatives began to express concern, saying, well, who will be her role model? Who will teach her to be a woman? But at the time, only 12 years old, the question made no sense to me. Why would I want to be a woman, I thought. The phrase, I'm not like other girls, so deeply engraved into my mind. Because from years of running around barefoot, toting cardboard shields and plastic swords, playing war with my male cousins, I had learned that those who are strong, smart, and fit for battle are those who are masculine. Being small, girlish, and much to my chagrin, always in a dress at family functions, I did my best to compensate. All I wanted to do was to be accepted by my family without resigning myself to all the boring, girly stuff. But I did like some of the girly stuff. I liked to paint my nails and do my makeup. I loved to sit with my grandmother and crochet. I absolutely adored Taylor Swift. But all my life, my immediate family had made me feel as though those things made me girly and uninteresting. I began to push everything feminine about myself deep down inside. I did not want to throw, think, or really do anything like a girl. However, entering 7th grade, my attitude towards my own gender began to change. I befriended girls who showed me that femininity can be empowering. All of them strong, intelligent, and confident, while loving things like winged eyeliner and sewing their own dresses. They were fearless, confident, comfortable with their own gender, all things I was definitely not at the time. Now I am so proud to be a girl. I know that femininity is not synonymous with ditzy, that to be a woman is not inherently weak or stupid, and to be a man is not inherently strong or intelligent. So now I've just told you an abridged version of one of the many mental journeys I've gone on in my life. Becoming comfortable with who I am and accepting myself, regardless of assigned gender, familial and societal expectations, etc. It's something everyone has to go through. Whether you're male, female, non-binary, or transgender, everyone suffers from expectations put on them and their gender. Teens in particular suffer from this, and it affects them for the rest of their lives. Erik Erikson's stages of development state that we as humans are in an almost constant state of psychosocial crisis, and that from ages 12 to 18, we struggle with identity versus role confusion. Basically asking ourselves, who am I? Who does society need me to be, and how do I fulfill that role? Which makes it all the more important that we send the right messages to teenagers at this time, allowing freedom for them to discover who they are and how to comfortably express that to the world. Now, growing up, I had developed this amazing ability to compartmentalize how I treated my friends when it was just us, using their preferred names and pronouns, and then when there were adults around, switching back to, as we in the community call them, dead names or dead pronouns, or the names and pronouns they were assigned at birth. Now, I did this both to protect myself and my friends, because adults weren't and still sometimes aren't always so accepting of those who are gender non-conforming. I remember doing this all dutifully, but still being so saddened by it, because my friends were too young to live in fear and shame of what their parents would think. They are still too young to feel unloved for who they truly are. So much has changed in society within the past few years regarding its view of gender and what it means. However, we still have a long, long way to go. Society still sends many negative, confusing, and discouraging messages regarding gender. Many of us still subconsciously equate femininity with timidity or lack of intelligence. We still equate masculinity with tenacity and knowledge. And you know what? For now, that is okay. The point of my talk is not for me to stand here and shame you for how you grew up or the lessons that you were taught. I hope that one day we live in a society where there is no subconscious prejudice. However, for now, the most important thing is for us to learn to live with the lessons that have been ingrained in us. Be conscious of these attitudes we grew up with and challenge them every single day. One of my favorite quotes is, what you think first is what society taught you, and what you think next is who you truly are. So next time you see someone, maybe they conform or do not conform to your gender norms, and maybe you like it or you don't. But no matter what your response is, make sure that you acknowledge it and correct yourself accordingly. I believe that there are 3 steps that we can take in order to make our society a more welcoming one to those of all gender identities and expressions. Step 1 is depressurizing, step 2 is rule breaking, and step 3, creating space. So let's start with depressurizing. Many individuals, not just teenagers, feel the need to be this or that. Men and women alike feel the need to fulfill their gender role and oftentimes feel trapped by it. Women in the workplace often feel the need to push down the femininity to be perceived as professional, and the need to embrace it all at the same time to be perceived as presentable. Caught between the two, trying to strike the perfect balance is a difficult battle for women in the workplace to win. In contrast, with so many women beginning to become empowered to pursue careers, we forget to appreciate women who choose to be homemakers. Now, the key word here is choose. It is just as empowering to choose to be a homemaker as it is to choose to be an engineer or scientist or author or anything else. The power comes from the choice. In contrast, men still experience large amounts of toxic masculinity. We encourage them to engage in unhealthy behaviors, such as suppressing emotions, consuming to excess, acting recklessly, because it is the manly thing to do. And again, we shame our homemakers, a vocation that is so underappreciated in our society because it is traditionally associated with being female. Everyone in our society has a role to play that is separate from their gender, and no one should feel pressured to pursue anything but. Now, that leads us into step 2, role breaking. Now that this pressure is lifted, society is no longer a hostile place for those who do not fit the gendered norm. So, feel free to let your daughters play with trucks and superheroes. Encourage them to explore math, science, and other subjects and vocations the same way you'd encourage your sons to. So far, most of society is doing a great job of this. Young girls and women now have a more diverse set of role models than ever to look up to regardless of the field that they want to enter into. But now comes the harder part, because still society finds it demeaning to be feminine. And we must challenge this. So, let your sons paint their nails, try on dresses, encourage them to explore skills involved in homemaking and crafts. And I promise you, it won't confuse them, it won't make them weak, it won't cause problems later on. But instead, it will allow them freedom. It will show them that you love them, regardless of their interests or what they wear. Allowing children freedom to discover who they are and to experiment doesn't cause problems later on, but instead it allows them to feel free, accepted, and most importantly, loved in whatever identity and expression they do choose later on in life. Now step 3, the final step, is creating space. And when I say creating space, I mean creating an environment in which individuals, especially children and teenagers, feel as though they have the room and the resources to grow into exactly the kind of person they want to be. We need to create these spaces in our homes by affirming to our children that our love is unconditional, and we will supply them with the resources that they need to be exactly who they want to be. Create these spaces in our schools by creating a gender-diverse curriculum in subjects such as science, history, and health, and also by ensuring that discriminatory behavior or bullying based upon gender is never acceptable and always has a consequence. And create these spaces everywhere else by treating everyone, regardless of what you think of their gender identity or expression, with the same respect and validity that you would expect yourself to be treated with. Now, my gender identity and expression is something that is extremely important to me and that I hold very close to my heart. Because even though I was assigned female at birth and I still identify as female, I spent so much of my life combating gender roles and stereotypes and becoming comfortable with who I am. Creating a society in which all gender identities and expressions, regardless of the binary, is also important to me because I have seen firsthand how it can affect the lives of those I love. Growing up was so confusing for my friends and I, as I'm sure it was for many of you at times. And we had so few role models along the way, especially those of my friends who were questioning or knew their gender identity and sexuality early on. Which is why we need to start sending the message to young individuals now that being who they want to be, regardless of whether it be feminine, masculine, both, or neither, is strong. It's intelligent, it's empowering, and it is certainly empowering to know who you want to be and then choose to be it. Thank you.